Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight for the Drawing Year Open Day, or Open Evening as it is. Really great to have so many of you with us, and we're really looking forward to talking to you this evening about the Drawing Year programme and hopefully encouraging some of you to apply. I'm Fraser Scarfe. I'm the head of the Drawing Year programme. I've been working at the school for about 6 years. And I was also a student on the programme myself way back in 2012. So I've sort of been on both sides of the fence. And I'm joined this evening by Rosie Chamberlain, who is our Drawing Year administrator, by Mark Cazalet, an artist and member of our senior faculty, and by Dexter Orszagh, who is an artist and a recent graduate of the Drawing Year programme. So really pleased to have them with us this evening. Tonight's really about just giving you an idea of what the Drawing Year programme is, how it functions, explaining the curriculum, and hopefully answering any questions that you might have about what the year looks like and why it might be a useful thing for you to apply to. Our hope is that the presentation that we show you will answer lots of those questions, and then there'll be a bit of time for some questions at the end if any of you want to ask them. So Mark and Dexter will talk about the programme, about the curriculum, and Dexter will talk a little bit about his student experience as a recent graduate. And then we'll show you a quick video of what our facilities look like at the school, and then we'll have a bit of time for questions at the end. Some of you watching will no doubt have been to the school before and will know our programmes and may have even come to draw with us in the past, and some of you watching won't know who we are or where we are. So we'll try and answer those questions for you. But to give you a very, very rapid history of the school, the Royal Drawing School was founded in the year 2000 by our artistic director, the artist Catherine Goodman, and supported by the then Prince of Wales, now King, His Majesty King Charles. And the school was founded at a time where drawing, the practice of drawing and the teaching of drawing in particular was starting to just disappear slightly from arts education, particularly higher and further education. And the school started as a band of like-minded artists and individuals who wanted to come together to share their knowledge of drawing and to continue the practice of teaching drawing. And what started as a sort of group of 20 or so students has now grown to quite a significant operation in our base here in Charlotte Road in London, and further afield, both online and around the rest of the UK. So we now have the Drawing Year programme, our postgraduate programme, which we're going to talk to you about this evening. We have public programme courses that take place in-house in Shoreditch in London, around London's various galleries and institutions, and also online for people across the globe. And we also run a young artist programme that Dexter will talk a little bit about when we hear from him later, teaching young people between the ages of 10 and 18 around different boroughs in London and further afield in the UK as well. So that small core group of people has grown into a much bigger operation, but I think we're still very much a small, coherent family of like-minded individuals, and it's a very special place to come and learn. So I'm going to hand over to Mark now. He's going to talk about the structure of the course and the curriculum, and then we'll hear from Dexter with a little bit more information about what it's like to actually study on the course. So thanks both for joining us, and over to you, Mark.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark, and I've taught at the drawing school for the last 14 years. We're going to show you now a presentation from my perspective as a senior member of faculty, how we as tutors really see the year and the excitement of the year as it develops. So just trying to get this on. Yeah, so the drawing school was set up, as Fraser said. Both the inspiration of our founding director, Catherine Goodman, who still is our artistic director, and His Majesty, King Charles, but behind them, a senior circle of artists who felt that observational drawing in particular, and we're going to come on and discuss what that might mean, the breadth of that phrase, because it's a really big spectrum of practice. We really wanted to encourage skills-based teaching. And for many art students, I teach at other art departments and another university. For many of you, I know that teaching can be on a kind of ad hoc basis, but we very much prioritize skills, the skills of looking, the skills of actually drawing, and also the skills, I think, of professional formation as an artist. We wanted to encourage artists who are active to be involved in education, so that we're not a professional teaching body. We're artists who come in from our studios, and we often say that we're a practitioner's course taught by practitioners. Postgraduate programs and, in fact, BA programs, as you all know, have gone from, in my lifetime, being paid for through taxes and a grant being issued, to now being fee-based. And that is an onerous, having had 2 children who've gone through the system, that's a really onerous load. And postgraduates can sometimes be out of reach for many people. And we wanted to keep this postgraduate program free, so affordable and more than that. And although drawing is now an established part of the contemporary art world, it certainly wasn't 15 years ago. It had fallen into a kind of a bit of a lacuna, as if it was an arcane practice. So the drawing year is essentially, in a nutshell, one solid year from September through to June, 3 10-week terms, and then we offer a 4th term, which runs from September to December, really for you to unpackage the year before 3 final shows, which I know Dexter will talk about in December. So it's more than a year, actually. It's a year plus a summer plus this extra term. Now, all students, let's pretend you've all got onto the drawing year, you're all awarded a full scholarship. There are no fees for your tutoring, for the space you use, and there are many more added advantages I'm going to come on to. Our vision is not just for the 30 or so people selected for the drawing year, and it's never been more than 30, and sometimes it's been less, it's around that number. Our vision is also for drawing to permeate like a taproot all the way down to the earliest years. So we take children who are just rising into secondary school, so from about 9 all the way up into their teens and foundation level. How are we different from other postgraduate programs? Well, we don't means test, which means every student who comes is instantly a scholar, which in itself is a rare accolade. Around 450, 480, probably more people this year will apply. So you will be maybe 1 in a 15 choice if you get in. The key difference, and I think you really need to understand this, is that we are a taught school. This is not a situation in which you're issued a studio and you go and do your own thing. Instead, you build up a modular selection of courses. And we have a minimum number of days, which is 3.5 days a week. We're going to talk about the breakdown of the offer. There are over 38 courses each term to choose from. So effectively, in the drawing year, there's no way that you'll get through even half of that number of courses. And there's a huge range, and it is a big range. Our curriculum is split into 5 areas. Drawing from art, we strongly believe that we are drawing on the shoulders of giants, that we are indebted to all the peoples of every cultural background who have drawn in the past. And so we study, as you're about to see, very closely from other art, contemporary and ancient. Drawing in the studio, mainly here in Shoreditch, drawing in London on the streets and through the environment in many different ways. Perhaps surprisingly for people who've tuned in and thought observational drawing, is that an academic kind of practice? Drawing in the imagination is a core part of what we do. And the core program, which we will explain in a minute, is purely for the drawing year to work together. So 100 courses to choose from during the year. And unusually, as postgraduate students, research students, you will be drawing alongside members of the public. Now, we do this for several reasons. First of all, we believe in our ethos of spreading observational drawing as wide as possible. Secondly, many members of the public, as I've been teaching today, turn out to be theatre designers, architects, doctors, designers of all sorts, other artists, professional artists who come back. And they offer us a range of experience and a richness of experience, which is, I think, hugely beneficial. So drawing in the studio, the first of our 5 areas. Well, if you haven't done live drawing in the past, don't worry. There are many ways in which the figure and working from the figure can influence your work, but it is a substantial part of our practice here. Transforming observation flips the lens and gets you to think about the very structure of perception and how you construct an image. Studio Room in Colour is maybe a more technical course in some ways, although interpretive, where you can really get to grips with how chromatics function. And Life Drawing Anatomy, Mechanics of the Human Form, is one of those courses that many people come on the year maybe a little suspicious of, thinking, do I really want to study anatomy? And once they've done the course, have their eyes open to the internal structure of life. Drawing from Art works in different collections. We have a very established program at the National Gallery, working from, if you like, a thin slice of the cream of Western European classical art. The British Museum, which obviously opens up the sculptural, textile qualities of art from around the world, which is a very rich resource, particularly maybe if you're a three-dimensional person. Sacred in Satire, which maybe mingles the purposes of art, whether it's edging towards a religious dimension or whether it's indeed a caricature dimension. And world imagery in art, of course, it's been incredibly popular over the last couple of years, specifically aimed at looking at a diverse notion of what cultural activity is. Drawing in London, for those of you who are maybe been brought up in London, you need your eyes open to the beauty and the amazement of the peoples and the places we have at our disposal. For those of you who are maybe moving to London, we really take you into, with courses like Local Landscapes, the village nature of London and particular identities of peoples. Last week I was teaching in Brixton Market, which was an amazing experience, and I think really broadened people's sense of who we are as Londoners. City Gardens and Greenhouses is, as it says, working in green sites, so maybe an opportunity to meditate on nature. And Drawing London by Night, the huge shift that happens from the busyness of the daytime city to the nocturnal mood and lighting. Paul Clay said, "One eye sees, the other feels." And if observational drawing is our bedrock, then the other eye is the psychological analysis, the emotional analysis, maybe even the unconscious mind at work. And we really do emphasize this aspect. And if you come to any of our end of year shows, then you will have seen drawing a story. I was actually teaching today, and we were looking at a short text by Catherine Mansfield. So the word and imagery. Drawing graphic novel is another surprise course that many people, or some people might say, graphic novel, how does that fit with imagination, or how does that fit with observation rather? And it's a key course because it helps you order the narratives you're telling and boil down to an essence. Printmaking is a natural adjunct of drawing on a surface, and we have a fantastic basement suite of print studios. We don't do silkscreen and lithography, but all the relief printing techniques we use, and we also prepare plates to go out and work in London and bring back and print from. And I think there are very few students who don't really enjoy the printmaking aspects of the course. On Wednesdays, you have a chance to work only with the drawing year. So no members of the public, it's just you together. And this enables us, the faculty, to really develop more particular discourses about materials, ideas, and set up conversations which we have a chance to really explore at greater depth or more experimentally. And I think, you know, we as tutors really enjoy the day, and I know the drawing year do. The studios are located in Mare Street in Hackney. It's a professional studio building, so certainly know many other professional artists who are there, and we're lucky to be able to place our students right at the heart of London's artist studio space scene. They're very generous compared to BA and MA studios across the board. You have a space which you genuinely can work in. You have 24-hour access 7 days a week. And we really expect you during the year to maybe shift from many courses in the first term to maybe fewer courses in the summer term as your own voice is developed in its studio and your research sort of bears fruit in your own work. It's your own space to work in. Contextual studies, if any of you like me come from a slightly dyslexic background and you find the written component of BA or MA work difficult, we do it in a different way. So there's no written component, but we do have regular forums in the year when, again, the contextual element of our work is able to be foregrounded. We have visiting artists who are interviewed in person or in conversation online, and they will do visiting tutorials. Our lecture series have been, to this point in time, mainly online after the pandemic, but increasingly in person. And we're very lucky to be able to draw on a fascinating series of artists. I really enjoyed Talar, but Denzel Forrester was fantastic. You've got Rachel Jones on the left, who you probably know her work. A lot of artists are keen to talk about this aspect of their work, drawing, which maybe doesn't have as much prioritization as it deserves, but a great list of previous speakers there. The faculty is big. We have 75 members of faculty, and that might cause you to reflect, how can you have 30 students and 75 members of faculty? It's because we are practicing artists, so we're drawn on as we need, and when we're not teaching, I'm in my studio working. So it's quite a long list here. Many names might be familiar, some less familiar. All have been chosen because of particular expertise, insight, and ability. So funding. This is probably the sort of one of the key draws to the course. And before we go on to discuss really what we expect of you, I think you need to know that we are really determined to keep this course free at point of delivery. And therefore, we don't have any means testing for your scholarship, which provides your teaching and your space. We also fund a painting trip in the summer. This year, we're going back to Tuscany, where we've been hosted before. And this is really at the end of the year to explore how maybe more liquid medium or the techniques of painting might be of interest to many people. And of course, many of you might already be painters, but it's an added benefit. Bursaries and grants. Well, brand new this year, you'll be the first year in which we really want to reflect the elevated cost of living in London and the hardship caused to people by trying to find a flat anywhere close to central London. So if you have been put off by the idea of transferring to London, we're now offering a London living grant. This is means tested. It's £3,000 for the first year. And then there are bursaries of up to £1,000 for spring and summer terms. And as it says at the bottom of this slide, all support is means tested and assessed upon defined criteria, and you can read those criteria, they're published. But that award of £3,000 for people who really need it, we believe we can offer to up to about half of the people who apply, and we can then help beyond that in the spring term as well. That's new, and I think it's extraordinary. I don't know any other college, university that provides in this way. Now, international applicants, we're very pleased that the newly launched graduate visa has allowed us to attract international students for at least 2 years after they graduate from a UK study course, such as a BA or a MA. So that's 2 years after graduating. You may still, as long as you're within that 2-year period, you can apply. Otherwise, the criteria are very straightforward. You must have a valid UK passport to apply. You must have settled or pre-settled status in the UK, or the graduate visa. So application is really very straightforward. Sometimes this confuses people because we ask for 10 drawings done in a dry media, ink or watercolor, and then 10 additional works. Now, these 10 additional works, we have students who we deliberately select from very different backgrounds. We're looking for the widest range of individuality, background, disciplines. So you will find yourself working along possibly doctors, architects, designers of all sorts, people from the theatre, dancers, musicians, composers, as well as people who've probably more normally come through the fine art route. So those additional works could be from your previous discipline, in some way connected to your application to draw for a year. The 2 sketchbooks, I think I'm going to leave to Dexter to talk about, because he's been through this process. The deadline is the 5th of April, 12 p.m. And I'm afraid it is 12 p.m. on the 5th of April. That's it. And sketchbooks, you'll be told when to drop those off. You apply online at our website address. You'll be interviewed, shortlisted candidates in late May, and you'll be asked to bring physical work to that interview, and that is important. You're offered a place on the quality of your work. We also have to try to balance the year in terms of individuals and their contribution, their possible contribution. We're not looking for the most polished of students. We're not looking for people who have the best qualifications. We're looking for people who need this course right now. And I would really counsel you to consider what the course is about, that it is a taught course. You're not left alone. You will definitely be interacting with maybe 30 or more tutors per term. We've been deliberately chosen as tutors because we have different approaches, attitudes. So you might even get slightly contradictory qualities of advice or propositions. We're looking for students who are independent, who are driven and are determined to become professional artists. This is not in any way a polishing course or something to do between going on to something else. This really is a course you have to give everything to. I think sometimes that notion that it's a 3.5 days minimum a week can disguise the fact that for many of you, you'll be earning money with part-time work perhaps, but it can't be run alongside another course or residency. This is all-consuming. It's a fantastic year where much is given to you, but much is expected. And normally at the end of the first term, people are slightly, in a good way, on their knees. They're really fully absorbed and quite exhausted, actually. It's a very demanding level. And again, if you've come from a BA or maybe even an MA where you've been left alone to do your thing, this is a course where there's a lot of conversation, interaction, and expectation on you to really reflect and drive yourself forward with all the opportunities you're given. I'm running through this course of this range of images from past students, really just to demonstrate that there is no house style. We have absolutely no intention of pressing you into a mold and trying to make you look like a Royal Drawing School student. That actually has evolved a lot over the 13, 14 years I've taught here. So if you look like the work that I've shown or you don't worry. We're looking for new types of students and participant. I normally come to a juddering halt, and I think I probably have. There we are. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to Dexter now to tell his story.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. So my name is Dexter Orszagh. I'm a recent graduate of the drawing year, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience on the year, what I gained from it. And I'm going to primarily do that by talking about a few different artworks, and then I'll give you some additional information about the overall student experience. I'd just like to start by doubling down on what Mark just said, that yes, the course is all-consuming. It's really true. And it's really quite a beautiful thing, actually. I started the course during the lockdown period. And one thing that was fantastic about the course is after a period of social isolation, I was really taken aback by how engaging this community of small artists really was. And it's something that I think will retain its benefit regardless of whether there's been a national lockdown or not. I think it's a really valuable thing. So I just wanted to double down on that as before I began. So I'm going to run us through some artworks and just talk about some pieces that I developed before the drawing year and during the drawing year, and how those pieces were informed by my experiences in the studio with tutors and by the year overall. So here's a piece that I was working on during the lockdown, during my application. I believe I actually applied to this. This is one of the pieces that I included in my sort of initial portfolio that was sent over to apply for the school. An untitled piece, a drawing from memory of a person that I'd seen in a supermarket. And supermarkets were strange places back then. People, as we could probably all remember, hoarding toilet roll and things like that. So the period leading up to my application, I was aware that the drawing school was interested in observational drawings. So that's generally my advice. You know, people sometimes ask me, okay, I'm thinking about applying to the school. What should I include? Definitely include stuff that's observational. This is actually sort of partially observational, partially memorized, drawn from memory. So I think that's kind of good. I think having a battery of really what we kind of work on at the school in your application would be good. Things from observation, things from life, but also if those things are sort of combined with imagination, combined with things from memory, I think that could sit quite usefully in an application as well, in my estimation. So this is quite an interesting piece. This was a drawing that I developed based on a piece by Elihu Vedder called Questioner of the Sphinx. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this piece to you all was because this is one of the pieces that I developed in the studio provided by the school, Space Studios in Hackney. And this was a piece that in my mind would only really happen because I had that space and that room to work on it in that environment. The studios provided are a real game changer. I'm sure many of you are already really excited by the prospect of having a free studio space. It is a game changer. It's a massive game changer. And I think the people who get the most out of the year are people that really take advantage of that space and spend a lot of time there and really, you know, commit to as Mark mentioned, in the summer and so on, being in that place and really getting comfortable there and making lots of work and utilizing the space. One of the really awesome things about the studio is that it's not just an environment for you to sort of go and work, it also becomes a community hub for the year. I can't count how many really illuminating conversations I had with peers in that environment, because you're all there working together. It's a really nice environment. You know, sometimes you could be up working quite late, and because you have 24-hour access, you could still be there with peers and colleagues. You'll be working towards tutorials together. You'll be doing a lot of preparation for your shows in that environment together. And it becomes a sort of a really nice focused hub environment where these not just work is made, but really useful conversations are had as well. Forums as well happened in the studios. I believe it was Mark, actually. Mark, I had a crit with Mark in the studio where Mark talked to me about this piece and convinced me to stop it where it was and to not overdo it, which I think was fantastic advice. This piece actually sold, so I think it was really good advice. So, you know, the studios become spaces for that kind of thing, not just work making, but also dialogue. Also, the scale of the studios is great. You've got nice big walls in there. So if you're thinking about maybe, I know one of the big things for me going into the year was that I wanted to increase my scale. I'd been working quite small, and being in the studios really allowed me to go much bigger, which was another really, really game-changing thing for me, because now I actually work even bigger than I could have imagined initially, and that would not have happened at all if I didn't have that studio environment to boost my confidence and test things out and fail things. Like, I think the studio is a really good place to try things and fail things and keep them very private if they don't work. And the studio is that kind of, you know, the Space Studios environment is perfectly suited for lots of that kind of activity. So here's a piece that I did on the British Museum class. So the great thing about the course is that you're going to be, yes, you're going to be drawing from observation, but you're going to be drawing from observation in lots of different avenues. You're going to be in galleries, you're going to be in life drawing classes, you're going to be in museums. Here's a piece based on an Ife head, which is an artifact discovered in Nigeria. And I drew this, actually, interestingly, I drew this in an online class. So our initial term was hosted online due to the lockdown. And this was drawn sort of from the British Library's digital archive, which is a really interesting archive because they have actually way more things in their digital archive than they do on display. So that initial period of working online, at first it felt a little bit odd, but I realized quite quickly that there was a lot to gain from it. Why am I talking to you about this? The lockdown's over. Well, I think one of the things that was realized during this period is actually, you know, a lot of good things can happen online, and some of the courses are offered online. So some of the courses that you might take during the year, you might be doing online. And I found that that was extremely useful, even when we were out of the lockdown, because if I wanted to do some evening courses, sometimes you might find it easier to balance online stuff with work-life stuff. So, you know, there's that window of opportunity too when engaging with the drawing school and the drawing year. So this is a sort of a breakthrough piece, and I decided to include this piece because, you know, Fraser asked me to include some work that was a moment where something switched for me, something awoken in me. I think I actually did this piece again with you, Mark. I actually didn't plan this to be a bunch of stuff related to classes that I had done with Mark, but hey ho, happy coincidences. This was a piece that I believe was in the, I believe this was in the drawing a story class. And this piece was quite interesting to me because in those classes, you're able to respond to a lot of things, and especially towards the end of the year, you'll find that lots of things you're doing in lots of different courses begin to synergize. This is one thing that I thought was really fantastic about the course. When I started doing like a museum class and a life drawing class and so on and so on, in a way it was a bit overwhelming, but by the time I got sort of, you know, partway through the course, I started to realize that these things were synergizing together. I'd be doing like a life drawing class on the Wednesday, and I'd be taking poses and anatomies into a drawing a story class on a Friday, and I'd be thinking about artifacts that I'd seen and drawn on a Monday. And what happened is I was able to then start putting together compositions in classes, but also take that knowledge and that info back to the studio and then develop things in an even more detailed capacity and in an even greater scale. And I think that's one of the really cool things about the year, is that all of these things that you do eventually become synergist and they become interrelated. And for me, that really sort of opened the doorway into my own practice, because I'm what you call an emerging artist. My background is actually in graphic design. So this idea of producing fine art for a living was very new. And this kind of synergist interwoven activity between courses opened up so much for me. And I think that's one of the real possibilities and sort of things that the course opens up. So here's a piece that I've done sort of like post-drawing year. So after finishing the course, this is something that, this piece is called Sequer 1. And really it's consolidating a lot of knowledge and things that I tried out in the drawing year, and a lot of my thinking around themes and you know, contexts around my work had sort of solidified themselves in the year and have allowed me to produce pieces like this. This is sort of a piece for a zine, so it's got that collaborative edge, but the structural elements in the picture are also brought in from other works I'm doing that are at a larger scale. So yeah, it's really fair to say that a big chunk of what I'm doing now has been massively influenced by the time I spent on the year. And as Mark mentioned, you know, this course is designed for people who are very serious about becoming artists. And that's what it's allowed me to do. Before the year, you know, I knew I wanted something, but I didn't know if I could go out in the world and become an artist. And now it's happening. And part of that, a huge component part of that, is these individual courses and drawings and pieces of work and conversations that I've made and had during the year. So let's just talk a little bit more about the offering and the student experience. A huge component of the year for me was the end of year exhibitions. You have 3 shows, which is crazy. It's a really intense period. I won't lie to you, I'll be very honest. It's an extremely intense period where you have 3 shows. They're almost like back to back. You will have the opportunity, if you join the year, to present work at Christie's auction house, which is a mind-blowing experience. It's a real opportunity to, if you haven't before, enter the gauntlet of trying to sell work. And yeah, it's a little bit intimidating, but it's also such a fantastic opportunity. And you're supported by your tutors and you're supported by the school in this activity. And really, you know, for me, it was a big game changer, actually being able to enter this high-end environment and actually sell my work to serious buyers. There's the end of year exhibition at the school in Shoreditch, which I'm sure many of you have been to and seen already. A fantastic, really like collaborative effort with the school. The space in the Royal Drawing School Charlotte location has recently been redesigned, and that space is a really awesome one, and the shows look great every year, so you get to participate in that. And then of course there's the open studio show at Space Studios in Hackney. I really enjoyed that show. I think in a lot of ways that was for me the most exciting show, because that's sort of peer-led in terms of curation. You're actually going to have to work with your fellow cohort, fellow artists, to actually curate this. And the curation process was super exciting to me, to actually work collaboratively and decide how you know your work will sit with your peers. And of course, there's funding and prizes for all of these opportunities as well. Teaching opportunities. So I'm engaged in teaching with the drawing school right now. So once you join the year, you will have the opportunity towards the end to apply for the Young Artist Program. It's a fantastic program which allows you to teach young people drawing skills. These courses are run across London but also across the country. It's a great opportunity if you've never taught before to get into teaching art. If you're already an educator, which I was as I entered the drawing school, for me, it was a great opportunity to broaden the age groups that I teach. For me, teaching young people sort of, 10 to 18 and younger was a big challenge area. I wasn't sure if I was cut out for it, but joining the Young Artist Program has allowed me to expand my teaching skill set in that way. And, I enjoy teaching these courses. I do them every Saturday. It's a really big and enjoyable thing now, part of my teaching repertoire. So those opportunities do become available as well. Professional development. Now, I can't understate how important it is that the school offers professional development. We were really lucky to have sessions and talks with people who really knew their stuff in regards to the art industry and the art world and the ins and outs of taxation and finances. And this was one of the things that the school offered to me that I thought was really severely lacking in my BA. I felt that in my BA, I wasn't really prepared for the real sort of financial, economic context of being a creative. But the drawing school did an amazing job of preparing me in that way. And even sort of at this later stage that I was going into my postgrad situation, I felt really amazingly equipped by some of the sessions that we had with the drawing school in terms of just taking the business aspect of being an artist, which is a real thing, a little bit more seriously, and actually feeling quite empowered to engage that stuff when prior it had been, a little bit scary. So that's something that the school offers as well. Residencies, they offer lots of residencies. I think the beautiful thing about the range of residencies available is the diversity in location. So as you can see here, it's a very global, the school has very global links. So, if you join the drawing year, you will have the opportunity to engage these as well, which, is fantastic. So I'm just going to be mindful of time and sort of pull to a close here. So spend a year at the drawing school and see how it changes your practice. I know it changed mine immensely. So just a refresher, here are the application dates again. I know Mark mentioned briefly about sketchbooks. In terms of sketchbooks, they can have a huge impact on your application. And I think for me, my sketchbooks, I had, one sketchbook that was filled with life drawing, and then one sketchbook that was filled with some observational stuff, but more of my imagined worlds and my world building stuff and my conceptual ideas. So one was super heavily observational. The other was a bit observational and a bit more imaginative. Worked for me, so that's the advice I would give. I think that's all from me for now.
Great, thanks so much, Dexter. And if I could ask you to stop sharing your screen. And I'm just going to show a very, very short video of the studios here at the school, just to give you an idea of the facilities if you've not seen them before. Hoping you can all see that. So we've got 4 drawing studios at the school, 2 on the ground floor, which also doubles up as a fantastic exhibition space for the end of year shows. And then 2 upstairs, which have been the studios since day 1 at the Royal Drawing School. The building's a former warehouse, and the top floor is a beautiful, fantastic place to draw. And then, as Mark said, we also have printmaking facilities on the ground floor, which we'll see in a moment. So it's quite a small print room, but as print rooms tend to be, it's very well organized, and we've got a fantastic team of technicians to look after it. And then the images you're now seeing are our studios in Hackney, so Space Studios at Mare Street in Hackney. And this is where our drawing year students have their private studio spaces. As Dexter said, it's where forums and crits and tutorials happen. And they're the spaces that really allow you to unpack all of this fantastic drawing tuition and feed it back into your own practice and sort of join up the threads, as it were. So whatever your practice is, whether it's painting or sculpture or installation or video, this is the space where you can really have that personal dialogue with what drawing means to your practice and how this intense period of drawing and research is feeding in and strengthening your practice going forwards. And as Mark said, they're pretty generous studio spaces by London Art School standards. So, we like to give you a good spot, and that's your home for a full academic year. So really great place to work with fantastic access. Okay, so I'm going to now hand over to Mark, Dexter, and Rosie, who will be able to sort of field and answer any questions that you might have. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screens where you can type in questions, and maybe if I hand over to you, Mark, you could sort of field some of those, and I'm sure Rosie and Dexter, you'll chip in as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got an interesting question for Dexter immediately, so I'm not going to answer that. But there's a question about loose drawings, and is it cheating if you bind them together in a book? No, it's not cheating. We don't have any cheating. As long as they're drawings, a sketchbook is how you work, how you think. And on one year, somebody worked in a fish and chip shop, and he did his drawings on the fish and chip paper every night. Not very hygienic. That's what he did, and they were stapled together, and that was his sketchbook. That's fine. We want to see how you think, get inside your mind. So if you're a wordy person, or you collect textiles, or photography is important to you, show us so we get a grip on who you are. That's all we want to see.
Cool. Yeah, so that question that was asked of me, when you applied, did you include examples of your previous graphics work as part of the 10 additional works? So I didn't include any actual graphic design work. My background's graphic design. My BA was graphic design and illustration. So that my illustration training informed all of the drawings that I submitted to some extent. But no, I didn't include any purely graphical design work. It was drawings.
Question about, is there a qualification at the end? We offer a diploma. We deliberately have not gone down the route of offering a postgrad, an MA, because it means we have to be inspected and associated with another university, and we want complete freedom in how we deliver and how the individual artists deliver their courses. So as a tutor, you have autonomy. So we don't give a postgraduate qualification, it's a post-diploma. The advantage is we have people who come from MAs, whether it's Goldsmith, the Royal College, wherever, they've already done an MA and they come to us. And there are other people who do our course and then go on to do an MA. So we're kind of a universal joint within the system. Dexter, any questions for you?
Yeah, sure. So is the course only open to recent graduates of BA courses, or can you apply at any stage after graduation? I applied years after graduating, so I think the answer is any stage is fine after your BA.
Two questions about age limit. I think it's important to be really kind of factually honest with you that the average age, I would say, is about 29, 30, but we've had people right up into 70. But the average age is around 30, maybe 31, possibly. So it changes every year. I would say that this is not a course for people who have already got a full career behind them and they just want to sort of add another string or change direction. This really is for people for whom, without this course, you probably wouldn't continue. Prince's Foundation were our origin, and that was to create jobs for people. So it is the professional side, and wanting to be a professional artist is very much our focus.
Yeah. Can you apply if you live out of London? Yep, absolutely. There's more, if you're applying internationally, there's more, we covered that in the presentation.
We have a question about if I'm going to be away for 3 weeks during the school year, is it possible to participate online for a period of term? No, the courses are in person and you do need for the term times to be here. I mean, if it's known in advance, and I mean, I'm hypothesizing here, but let's say it's a medical intervention or something, then of course, we're really human and would want to help and accommodate. The answer is tell us in advance, make it clear so everybody knows what they're taking on and we can discuss it and try and help you. But if it was a question of taking 3 weeks out each term, I don't think that would work for you. But then it's above my pay grade. So again, you know, that's not a final decision, but I would say 3 weeks every term? No. 3 weeks once a year? Well, I think tell us why.
Yeah. Can I just confirm, do the sketchbooks only need to be sent if you get through the first round? If I'm correct, aren't the sketchbooks part of the first round?
Yes, they're part of the application. So as you complete your online application section, you then get some more information about how to submit your sketchbooks. And there is a drop-off date, actually, we've had them confirmed. So it would be the 11th and 12th of April for sketchbook drop-off. And then some people do have, obviously, geographical constraints. So students that are applying from outside of the UK, obviously, perhaps won't be able to drop them off in person. So there is a way of submitting them digitally or posting them if that is appropriate to you. I think if you've got really specific questions about sketchbooks or the application process that is sort of tailored to your specific circumstances, then I would get in touch with the drawing year team through the email, and we can help you specifically with your application. So I think it will be on the way you sort of applied to join this open evening, but it's drawingyear@royaldrawing.org if you need any assistance with your specific applications. But I'll drop that in the chat just so that it's there for you to refer to.
Cool.
Got a question about work days per week. 3.5 days is the minimum per week, but that's taught delivery. We then would be hoping that you would be in the studio, as Dexter said, as much time as possible. So maybe a couple of days. It's going to be very difficult to maybe fit a full 3 days a week job. So somebody wrote in about relocating to London and working Monday, Tuesdays and another day. I think that's going to be tricky because you're only leaving 2 weekdays at the drawing school, which wouldn't be enough to do the 3.5 days required. We've had a lot of students in the past who've banked up money. They've decided to go on a real earning splurge and then actually come to the drawing year and kind of lived quite parsimoniously, quite thinly, but managed not to be able to work too much.
That's exactly what I did, yeah. Okay,
so our model student, I mean, what can I say? Dexter's the model. There's another question about, sorry, I've put myself off. Dexter, you answer one.
Yeah, sure. I'm an artist, but I have not had any work sold or exhibited. Would I still be considering the application? So I was in the same situation before I applied. So the answer to that is yes, from my perspective.
We've had students who've applied who've been bicycle couriers with no formal tertiary education. People who've come out of the forces, who again entered the forces young and no formal education background. It really is horses for courses. If you need us, and we think you've really got something, then you stand a really good chance. It really is on an individual basis. Somebody said, does it count how many times you've applied before? Well, I definitely know of one candidate who applied 4 times and she got in on the 4th time and she won one of the major prizes at the end of year. So, I mean, don't be put off if maybe even once, twice you haven't been successful. The point is it's the right moment in your development, not kind of how many times you've applied.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce that because I didn't get in the first time I applied. I applied straight after finishing my BA. And that's exactly what Mark said, is like when I did get in, that was when I knew it was the right time, looking back on it holistically. So yeah, absolutely, don't be deterred.
I've got a question down here from Aaron about, may I know how the experience of college teachers who joined this course? Aaron, if you're asking, you know, are there tutors, lecturers who come to the drawing year? The answer is yes, there are. Many who actually were also lecturing and that was their part-time job, which is, you know, really fascinating because they're going back into full-time study whilst also lecturing. And I think they found it radically enlarged how they were teaching. So I would say vocational teaching is also one of the main strands for applying that. That's a good argument. Animation, somebody said, could I put animations in as part of my additional works? Absolutely. Every year we have at least, I'd say, one animator, and we love moving image.
Yeah.
Well, I love moving image anyway.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think we were working with some people recently who had their backgrounds were in like video game design and things like that. So yeah, in those additional images, we like to see a range of things. Haya, how much annotation is needed for the sketchbooks, and could you define dry media for the first 10 images? So the annotation, I don't think it's too specific. We don't have like a specific kind of thing. You need this kind of annotation, this and that. I think what is natural in your sketchbook, and dry media for the first 10 images. So, you know, basically anything that isn't paint, right?
I've got a question from Chloe about, is there any external funding that students have successfully applied for to support living in London? I don't know of students on the drawing year, but I certainly have written a reference for a student, an alumni of ours, who won the Elizabeth Greenshield Award, and she got funding purely to fund her MA course at Sitting Guilds of London Art School. So by inference, there are other awards. They're very competitive, and it's a tricky one because you can only apply for them once you know you've got a place. And that doesn't give you a lot of time from May to September, but look into it right now, the Grant Making Trust directory, be prepared to do a lot of writing and applying, I'm afraid.
Perhaps, Mark, you already touched on it, but we also from September so for the time that you would apply for, we're also offering the London Living Grant for students who would begin in September.
I think, Rosie, the question is for external funding on top of people who apply with. So we can offer you up to £3,000 for the London living allowance, but if you need more money than that, I'm afraid we're, you know, unless there is unexpected hardship, where we do have small funds to help people who every year run into unexpected problems, we can't offer you major sums on top of that. I think that's right, Rosie, isn't it, really?
Yes, yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Have you had any applicants with children participate in the drawing year? Yes, successful applicants. I had studied with a woman who had a child,
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, look at your energy levels. Consider whether this is the right moment to apply. If you've got maybe a supportive context, you know, there are some evenings when we have lectures on Wednesday evenings. Otherwise, most days close at 5. What is difficult is if you need to get away before 5. So this does come up every year. You know, I'd need to leave at 3:30 to pick up kids, or 3. Again, if that's every day, that's going to cut the day really short, and probably is going to be an issue. We do work till 5, and because it's taught sessions, we do summaries at the end of the day, which really are important. So that's just something to bear in mind. But loads of students have made it work with kids. I was teaching a mum today who definitely goes back to a very busy family.
Yeah. For the 10 drawings, is there a set format to display them in? Can they be placed within the background of any size? And can multiple be on one page? So my experience of the application is that I don't think there is a format limit, is there? Because I'd seen people with really big works. And personally, when I applied, yes, I did have one image, which was actually a composite. So I'd put smaller drawings onto one page. So my understanding is that is okay to do as well.
Oliver Marr asks about what we expect in the 500-word statement, the written statement. Be yourself. We're really not interested in you trying to sort of blast us with art speak. All the interview process is trying to understand who you are, what your needs are, what your ambitions are. And my advice is try to be really true to yourself, exactly and totally true to yourself, and tell us what you'd most like to be and do. You know, be ambitious in the statement. Nobody will laugh because we're all artists and we're all dreaming and hoping and struggling. So you're amongst friends. I think that's what I really love about the drawing school, is that there's no hierarchy. There's no, like, there's senior faculty, but there's no kind of heads of department or invigilators or assessors. You know, once you're in the drawing year, you're in the drawing year.
If I'm already a practicing artist, can I still apply? Yes, absolutely. As a significant portion of the people that I studied with on the year were already quite deep into their careers. So yes.
Are monotypes part of the 10 drawings, or are they additional works? Oof, this is right on the line. It depends again, Chloe, whether, you know, those monoprints maybe you're drawing into. I'd just say those 20 works, put the 20 best things that you've done in, but they might be raw. You know, they might be best because they contain the seedbed of your best ideas or your best expression, but not polished. So I don't think there's a defining kind of monoprints can be drawings and they can be additional. Rosie, is that fair?
I think that's fair. Yeah. I think obviously the debate about what can go on indefinitely, but I think you're right.
Sophie,
also,
can I start later? Sorry, Rosie, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it. Go on, Mark.
Because Sophie asks, can I start later if commuting from outside London? Again, Sophie, these are really taught sessions, so they begin at 10 and they end at 5. So like National Gallery, where I teach, we begin with a talk and a discussion at 10. If you come at 10:30, 11 every day, every week, you're basically going to be missing the whole setup of the day. The kind of program and the argument of the day is gone. So I'm afraid you'll be asked to be here at 10. And I know what that means in terms of prices for trains, because I teach outside London and I know exactly what it means getting a high ticket, but that's something you'll have to factor in. You're getting so much else. You'll have to balance that with the horrible price of commuter trains.
I'll just quickly jump in there, actually. I think there's a few questions about people applying from outside of the UK. And just to be clear that the course is not an accredited course. So I think Mark and Dexter did touch on the fact that this is not an MA. It's MA standard, but you do not leave with an MA qualification. So unfortunately, the school cannot sponsor you to apply for a study visa. I think if you're studying in the UK already or have done within 2 years of finishing your course, you can apply for a graduate visa, which we do accept, and that's absolutely fine. But other than that, I believe you need a valid UK passport, or you can apply for an ancestry visa, or have settled or pre-settled status in the UK. And at the moment, that's all I think the school can offer, just because of where it stands as an unaccredited course.
Minna asks a really tricky one. This is a collector's question. She got stuck in New Zealand through COVID, and all her work is there. Can she use digital images for interviews? I would say, look, we're going to be really understanding with your situation, Minna, but if there are 1 or 2 pieces, particularly on paper, that could be posted, should you get an interview, I would say give yourself the best possible chance. Maybe we can understand huge bits not being sent back, but anything that's really good that we can have eyes on. The interview isn't till when, Rosie?
It will be May. The dates have
May.
been.
Okay, so I'd say, Minna, get hustling, get drawing, have something to show us. This happened to me in Paris on a scholarship. I was told they had a place, and actually they suddenly wanted a portfolio, and literally within a week, you know, I had to do some things. We just need eyes on your touch. I think it's also important that we know it's your work. Obviously, we trust you completely, Minna, but you know, we have to be sure that this is the real person applying. So yeah, original works, I think, would make a difference. I'm sure we've missed loads. I'm really sorry. There's so many other questions. Ritesh from India is asking about restrictions on study visa. That's quite a technical question. Again, go back to the terms, the criteria that we've given. Rosie, can those be looked at online for Ritesh? Is there a definition?
Yes, so if you visit the website, and there is an international application section to the postgrad portion of the website. So again, it will probably list pretty much what we've already said, but that is basically it. I think in terms of getting into a to and fro about what's what, that is all we offer, and it's on the website. So if you need to refer to it, I think you'll probably be able to sort of know more about what your circumstances are. But yeah, hopefully that's covered international applications.
There is a question from an anonymous attendee about moving from north of England down, and about other types of funding, and will there be information available? I'm afraid we can tell you the criteria for the London Living Grant that we give, but we don't provide other funding information, no. I mean, I think if you're looking for outside external funding, again, that's something you have to do for yourself. The really unusual £3,000 that we're offering is the only thing we're accountable for and can give you criteria for, I'm afraid.
I think also to add to the back of that, there's a question about accommodation. I've heard it's really expensive to live in London. Are students helped in any way to find accommodation? And actually on that, I think students were finding accommodation very difficult to find this year. Obviously, the cost of living's gone up. School doesn't provide accommodation for its students, but I think there will be a concerted effort this year to really sort of help in the search, but obviously the school does not provide it. So I think it's something to bear in mind. It is expensive. There's no two ways about that. I think, you know, it will be the usual means of house shares and word of mouth, and really kind of getting on the sort of, you know, formats of looking at spare rooms and things. That is honestly how students find accommodation.
Yeah.
Rosie, some quick technical questions. Will you get feedback if you're unsuccessful?
No, unfortunately, just to the sheer volume of applications we received, we would not have time to do that in any capacity. So unfortunately, no, if you are unsuccessful for interview, you won't receive feedback.
What date will people who are successful in being offered a place be told?
That is actually a very good question, to be confirmed, but hopefully within a couple of weeks of the deadline. We obviously want to get things moving and get the interview dates in so that you've got those, and hopefully that will be as soon as possible after the deadline. So unfortunately, I haven't got that date.
And there's an ancillary question about, can you defer a place if you get offered it? And the answer is, I don't think it'll happen, because we're looking for people for whom the course is right this year. So if you've got a better offer or another offer, then go for that. Because if you don't want us first and foremost, then we're probably not the right place for you at the moment. So apply when it does feel right, and when you feel that we'd be the first and only choice you'd make. Mm. I would say that, but I mean, I think that's how the committee will feel. I know. Yeah.
I've recently finished an MA in printmaking. Do you recommend leaving a bit of time to work on my practice outside of university before applying? So in my experience, I was on the year with people who had literally just finished a BA and went straight in. They had a great time. I myself took many years, like over 5 years between my BA and doing this course, and I had a great time. So I don't think there's any one answer to that. I think both are valid. You just kind of need to think about what's going to be right for you at the time.
Could I just add, I think MA applicants, be very sure, because I mean, I did a lot of years in art school, that you really want more time in an institution. I found myself actually at the Slade being offered an MA place, having done 2 postgraduate scholarships, and I heard myself just say, do you know what, I don't want this. It just suddenly occurred to me, I don't want to be in another institution. So I think by all means apply if you've done an MA, please do, but be sure that you really want a very different kind of education from what you've had on BA and MA, and that you've got the capacity to work with a new institution flexibly and kind of expand and flex into a very different format, because we are. I hope that doesn't put you off, but I'm trying to be kind of honest as well.
Yeah. Do you differentiate between drawings and illustrations? I think it can become a bit subjective at times. In my opinion of my own work, I had things in my sketchbook that I submitted that I thought were illustrative, and I had things that I thought I might describe more purely as drawings. So I don't know. How hard do you think the school might make that distinction, Mark?
Sorry, I was just reading another question. Can you say that again?
So we've got a question. Do you differentiate between drawings and illustrations?
No, absolutely not. I mean, a drawing is what you say it is. I know it sounds a bit weird when we say there are wet drawings and dry drawings. I think what we mean is, as opposed to somebody applying just with oil paintings, let's say, or just prints. So I think normally it's the medium, the support you use, so it works on paper. But then I can think of numerous examples where people have drawn on wood or drawn on walls, for instance. So illustrations, no, I mean, I think that's no, that's not a concern. What I would say is, if it's an illustration that's produced commercially for a client who has given you the brief and told you how to work, then that may not demonstrate independent thinking on your behalf. So I would say that was that'd be additional work because it's commercial portfolio.
Yeah,
whereas I'd say the 10 drawings, they should be expressive of where you want to develop as a research artist.
Yeah. How does the second stage of the interview look, and any advice for a successful applicant? So you'll be in a room, I was in a room with sort of a panel of tutors and the head of the school. My advice for that situation is be ready to talk, because they're going to open up your portfolio, spread all the work out, start dissecting it. They're going to ask you lots of questions. It's an overwhelming process. It can be quite fast and intense. So my advice is go in there ready to talk. Yeah. Be ready to have that conversation and have it rapidly.
We have an anonymous attendee who's said that actually making 2 sketchbooks, partly due to ADHD, is going to be really difficult. They've got one that they think is good. Could the second one be a compilation of digital images? Probably not, unless you know, we really want to see hands on paper. Really, we want to see how you communicate visually. I would say, you know, do another now, or maybe you've only got one and you have to accept that, you know, we're asking for 2 and you've only got 1. There was once a candidate who had filled no written statement in at all. And in the interview, I actually asked him, why have you not written a statement? And he said, I didn't feel like it. Well, he still got a place. It was a really eccentric and odd decision. But actually there were once you got to know him, there were reasons. So listen, if 1 is what you've got and it's good, let's hope it's good enough. We ask for 2, so you're kind of slightly denting your chances, but maybe you do a sketchbook over a weekend. And maybe for you, you just have 1, which is much more rapid.
Would you consider drawing with text and diagram? I believe so, yeah. I mean, there's a graphic novel course at the school.
Yeah.
So I think we're interested in text as well, right?
Yeah. Can you apply if you're a writer, so haven't got sketchbooks of your drawings? I think if you're a writer and you're applying to the drawing year, you're going to, this is where I'd say people who transition from another discipline over will have to accept you're going to have to make up ground. So you're going to have to work a lot harder. So let's say a dancer or a musical composer who comes into a fine art orientated drawing course are going to have to really invest more time and more energy. So if you're a writer, if you haven't got sketchbooks of drawings or any kind of fragmentary sense of drawing process, is this the right year? Are you prepared enough? Would be my question. If you don't submit any drawing sketchbooks, I think that's a question mark is flagged. Kind of how are you going to cope with thinking all the time through drawing every day? Again, doesn't mean you won't get in, but I think you're going to flag a question there.
I've recently started using an iPad for some drawings. Will they count? I believe those would count in the 10 additional drawings, right? Digital pictures. Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we've got another one here.
There's one about I heard about an artist who applied, wasn't successful to the drawing year, but instead offered a 3-month public course at a reduced rate. Is this something that happens often? I would say not very often. And I think, you know, obviously I've said we can't offer feedback to applications, but something that perhaps school tries to offer is, you know, if this isn't the right year for you, you know, there are other options that school provides, which, you know, consists of the public program. So perhaps, you know, there's a further conversation to be had by perhaps, you know, participating in the school in other ways. And maybe it's a case of, you know, being encouraged to apply again. But I think sometimes it happens, but yeah, not too often.
Question just come in about living abroad and whether the interview could be conducted digitally. again, I think the panel are flexible, but you're giving yourself a less good chance by not being there in person. You know, having done a lot of interviews, quite often it is the personality in the room. I remember once an interview closing, and the person stood up and she just pulled this huge painting out and said to one member of the panel, "You hold that," another, "You hold that." And suddenly we were back, the interview was back on. Yeah. And it's just sheer force of personality in the room. So if possible, I would say always attend an interview in person, because we are going to expect you to be here in person. And yeah, I think you're giving yourself the best chance. But I think, Rosie, has it happened? Have you had digital in the last year? Do we have a digital interview?
I think, yes, I think Fraser did mention that there had been one. Okay. And obviously we want to accommodate where possible, but I think what you're saying, Mark, is right. You know, it is an in-person course. Give yourself the best chance. And I think often that means turning up in person. Yeah,
I think, I mean, also we're with a portfolio, if you imagine being in person, you have a big physical presence of your work in the room. And again, it's back to this sense of materiality, touch, kind of the integrity and authenticity of the person. It's really there in front of you. And again, I remember people not speaking during an interview, but they pointed at things. And it's kind of like, you could see the intelligence. You thought, yeah, I get it. I get it. They've answered that question. That's fantastic. Yeah. I think sometimes it's reading the person in a dimensional sense, which maybe,
and also, you know, you won't get any more time than an in-person one. And like Dexter mentioned, you know, the in-person one is difficult, you know, to kind of get yourself across and have enough time to be able to say what you want to say. So obviously without that in-person sort of environment, you know, potentially that's even more difficult.
I just add something in there. I think a big part of my interview was that actually I was having multiple conversations at the same time. Work gets pulled out and spread across the room, and groups of people are looking at the work in little enclaves, and you jump between them. You say, well, that was that, and that was that, and this was that. And the reality is, I just don't think you'd be able to do it to that capacity online. So yeah, being in the physicality of the space and the interviews, in my opinion, was really important.
Yeah. I've reached the end of the questions, Rosie.
Yes, I think we have reached the end of the questions.
We're really sorry if we've missed anybody out.
So yeah, I think, to be honest, I think we've covered most things there. And please do refer to the website. There is a lot of useful information on there. Obviously, we've got less than a month to go. Give yourself plenty of time to apply. Obviously, try not to leave it to the last minute if you are considering it. And obviously, like I mentioned, do get in touch with the drawing year if there is some really burning question that isn't answered on the website, and we'll try and get back to you. But
Rosie, just one thought: if you don't know anything about the drawing school, you haven't been to any of the shows, go to the alumni section and look at a year group's work. Just go through a year group and check out maybe the last 2 or 3 years and say, are there things here that excite me? I mean, are there things here that kind of, I don't want to be like them, but I really like what they've done. I'm really interested. That's a good sign.
I mean, I think that's a great point. The website actually archives every year's exhibitions, and you know, there's 400 plus images per year, so you really have a feast to kind of work through in terms of visual material to get an idea. Great idea, actually, Mark. Yeah. And
also the student alumni stories. Dexter, have you done a story?
Yeah.
Yes, he has.
You can listen to Dexter's story. So
yeah, please do. We talk quite openly about our experience as well. So if you've had enough from hearing from me today, you can listen to other graduates talk about what their experience was. It's very useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to thank you all for attending this evening. It's been great to hear your questions. Hopefully, I believe Mark and Dexter have done a very thorough job. So thank you both for the talk. And we look forward to receiving your applications, fingers crossed. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Rosie. Bye, buddy.
Bye.
Good luck. Thanks.